I am Adam Lundy, co-host of They Live by Film, a podcast dedicated to bringing you film discussion and interviews from around the world. Every week, my co-hosts Chris Haskell, Zach Bryant and I discuss a wide range of films, from monumental classics like Vertigo and The Rules of the Game, to the craziest, schlockiest movies ever made like Deathbed and everything in between. We are also lucky enough to have sat down with some of the biggest players in the boutique Blu-ray and film restoration game. If this is your thing, then come hang out with us every Thursday at 7 PM Eastern, wherever you normally stream your podcasts, and now as part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello there, and welcome back to The Disconnected. I'm here with Paul Rust, writer, comedian, actor extraordinaire. Musician is probably one of the biggest things that I should throw in there as well, because I love a lot of your music. So, Paul, thanks for coming on here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Ryan, for having me on your podcast. Much appreciated. Thank you.
I mean, I've got so many things I want to talk about tonight, but for the first thing, I currently live in Kansas City, Missouri, and you grew up not too far away from here, from what I hear.
Yeah, exactly. My high school senior road trip was me and three buddies hitting the road and traveling. What is it? 5.5 hours from Northwest Iowa,
Yeah,
Lamar's,
something like
Iowa, to Kansas City. And we stayed at a hotel. It got pretty wild. We stayed at a hotel, then we drove back the next day. But I love Kansas City. I have family who lives there. Oh
Nice.
My gosh. Hitting up the double trouble of Worlds of Fun and Oceans of Fun when I was a kid. You couldn't pry me away from that Timberwolf roller coaster. I loved it.
The big city of Kansas City compared to tiny town Iowa, I guess.
Oh, truly, though. That was true. I mean, like, to go to a Kansas City Royals game in that stadium and see that dazzling blue shining above me. And I mean, nothing is better than, I'm sure it's changed. I haven't been there in probably like 20 plus years, but it had like 1985 World Series winners emblazoned on the side. Yep. I was like, just to see that year be treated so respectfully. I love it. It brought a tear to my eye.
Well, I mean, one of the things I guess we could talk about with that, how do you make your way from tiny town Iowa to where you're at now? That's a big change.
Yeah, well, it's for this kooky love of the cinema, man. I wanted to save this before I forget. I wanted to share this on the podcast and say it on record. This observation I have. It's cool that you live in Kansas City, because you said that in the email. It got me thinking, isn't because of the salt mines they hold like the prince of movies? Not salt, but like Stanley Kubrick, the Warner Brothers does own like the original cut of 2001, and out of respect, they never show it. But I think they could if they. I mean, it does exist in a Kansas City salt mine. It is the heart and soul of physical media.
This is accurate, and I mean, funny enough, one of the big things, my day job, I work for immigration, actually, and Kansas City is
cool.
It's home of the caves, they call it. It's the National Record Center, literally in the side of a mountain here, underground. We have like 26 million different immigrant files that we keep here because it's the safest place to keep them. It's wild how many things are archived underground in Missouri.
That rules that you have a part of that, because I've seen there's not much about it online. Like, I don't know if it's like the CIA. They don't want to show anything that people can look at and then sneak in and get. But it's so funny because what I imagined it to be and what it looked like was vastly different. Like, I imagined it was going to be like caves, like holding a torch. And then when I went down there, I was like, oh, it's like at the end of Cabin in the Woods, that like Cybertronic, all white, clear glass. It's cool.
Yeah. It's wild. The immigration center here that's underground there, you'll go You're basically inside a building, and then you come around a corner, and one of the walls is literally rock. Like, it juts out into our hallway. It's pretty crazy.
Oh, because they don't want to mess with it. It's like, let's keep that.
It would make it unstable.
Very cool. Well, congrats. I love that.
Yeah, archiving is a big part of my life through and through, it seems.
Bravo.
But yeah, escaping somewhere like Lamar's is not easy. And I came from a small town kind of close to where you're at now. I actually grew up in Barstow, California.
Oh, Barstow, of course.
It's an awful place. I hope nobody goes there ever. But yeah, leaving a town like that is hard. How were you able to break free? Was it difficult?
Yeah, I must confess, I was thinking about it before. I never challenged myself to ever go somewhere new where I didn't know somebody before.
That's amazing.
Like, I grew up in Lamar's, and then I went to the University of Iowa, and I went with two buddies who I'm still buddies with, but like guys I grew up with since kindergarten. And I remember the first day I moved into my dorm room, I thought they hadn't moved in yet, and I was like, my heart was racing. I was like, who am I going to be with? Now, yeah, I found other friends at college, but like that softened the blow. And then after the University of Iowa, I was like, I wanted to go to Chicago because of Second City, and I was familiar going visit my sister there, who went to DePaul, and I would go see fun comedy shows. So I thought, that's where to go. And then a lot of my friends I met at the University of Iowa, 3 friends, they lived out in LA, and they're like, you don't know anybody in Chicago, you nut. You should come out to Los Angeles. So I moved out there, and I realized, and then I really leaned on them, stayed at their apartment until I found a place, and they hooked me up with temp jobs and stuff. But I did have one person angrily say to me, like 15 years ago, like, you've never challenged yourself and never had to go alone somewhere. I was like, it's true. It's true.
Well, I mean, this tells a different story, like the power of networking. You got to make friends. You got to find people that you can rely on and trust. That's a big deal too.
That's true. And, personally, I hated all of them. It disgusted me to even be around them, but it was just the fact that they were present and helping me out. Then I was like, okay, I'll forgive that. I loathe. Just kidding.
So break into everything. Just be selfish. That's what I'm hearing.
No, friends first, friends forever. Of course.
Well, and sadly, that's the dark side of getting anywhere through some of these businesses. You have to just simply know people sometimes. But I mean, making that first geographic step is kind of the hardest part for a lot of people.
Yeah, and then when I could imagine that being true, and if I had not had that, and then when I moved to Los Angeles, I started doing open mics with my friends that I met at Iowa, Neil Campbell and Michael Cassidy. Neil Campbell, who's a very talented and writer-performer in his own right, and Michael Cassidy, who also talented, and in my band, Don't Stop or We'll Die. We're still all a creative crew together. After we did open mics, it was right when the UCB Theater had come to Los Angeles, and it was one of those, I think if I had moved to LA like a year later, I would have missed out on sort of a opening gap where they were, no false modesty, they were allowing some less talented folks in through the door. They needed that calendar filled. And I did everything I could to fill every square like a little rat. And so I started performing there and then meeting friends and doing stuff with them. And, it was, the move probably was, I remember, just to give an example of how it was different. When I first moved to Los Angeles, I needed a key made when I got my new apartment, like a double. Me and my friend Adam needed a key made, and we I went to get a double made, and I was like, oh, well, where do you get one made? And I was like, of course, Walmart. So I Googled Walmart, and I was like, okay, 15 miles away from here seems unusual, but sure. And I got in my car, and I drove like an hour and a half outside like the LA County line to a Walmart, and I'm like going up these weird escalators. It was like a retrofitted former mall that had turned into a Walmart. And I got up and I got the key changed, made, the double made, and then of course, like as I'm driving back from Walmart to my apartment, I'm passing like hundreds of key stores. It's like every corner. So there was some shifts I had to make. Did you live anywhere between? Did you bop around? Were you in Barstow and then Kansas City, or?
Well, kind of. I actually grew up the first 5 or 6 years of my life down. I was born in Pomona, so just outside of LA, and then lived in Upland for a little while. Moved to Barstow, and then I moved to Kansas City sight unseen about 11 years ago now.
Oh, cool! That's awesome. Yeah. Do you still have family around different areas, or?
This is a funny story because Barstow, if you've driven through there, probably I'm sure you have at least once. Anybody that's ever driven through Barstow knows it sucks. It looks like just the worst. Like, how does anybody live in this hellhole type of town? I mean that fully, like with everything in me. We moved here and we're the only one that could leave. Like, talking about how hard it is to leave small towns. And somehow we've gotten, not exaggerating here, both of our families and like somewhere between 10 and 15 friends to all move to Kansas City after us because we were the anchor. They would come and stay with us for like 6 months, find their own place, and now we've got our whole everybody here. That's
great. Well, it's a fantastic place to live, and I'm not just saying this, I've said it before, which is like if I could live in the rolling green hills of Iowa, and under the big bright blue skies, I would. If I could also, audition for parts in Drake and Josh, how am I going to do that? Living in a beautiful part of the country.
At least there's no controversy surrounding anybody from Drake and Josh in the news in the last 3 months.
Yeah, literally my first speaking acting job I booked was on Drake and Josh, where I played a guy who, at a science fair, he has a watermelon lamp with a working light bulb. And they say to this guy, hey, dude, you had a watermelon lamp last year. You know what my character said? But this one is seedless. Hey, all right. Get that SAG card. Being hired by monsters.
Might be able to get health insurance this year. Nice.
Yes, by the grace of a monster.
Oh gosh. And I mean, around that time, I imagine it probably wasn't quite as difficult to break through as it is now. It's wild how much stuff has changed already in the last 18 years with the internet becoming so big, and streaming, of course.
Without a doubt. I remember right before YouTube, remember Google Video was trying to fight it out? They were throwing their elbows trying to... You'd watch some stuff on it, and it'd be like, this might be the wave of the future. And then YouTube, obviously. And then, yeah, it's interesting because, or interesting to me, but when internet comedy like hit, it not that the talents were comparable, but it reminded me of stories I would hear about like, after Nirvana hit it big, anybody who had like a garage band, major labels were like signing up. Like The Lonely Island hit it big. Yeah. Like they carved, like they're the greats. They originated what this is. And then TBS, the Turner Broadcasting System, is like, we're going to do this superdeluxe.com. And it's like, y'all don't understand. This is going to go to everybody's going to YouTube. Yeah. And that lesson still isn't being learned 3 times over now. People are like, they're always just going to go to the main shoot or whatever.
It's the path of least resistance too.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, as that like shook out, but it also was great in terms of there was this thing, Channel 101, that was going on in Los Angeles, and Drew Carey was paying for the bandwidth so people pre-YouTube could put up their TV series. He was amazing, yeah. And
how has he always been just this amazing person?
I know. Drew carries the weight of all of our burdens. That's a nice way of putting it.
It was an easy pun. I love it.
Too easy.
You have some very specific projects I would love to dive deep into, if that's okay.
Please.
This is I've got a decent sized audience, but this is probably only going to be for like 6 of them. I personally grew up in marching band, so I adored ska, and I am so jealous that you were on the Aquabats Super Show. What the fuck? How was that?
Oh, that's great. I thought you were going to mention, too, I played a ska-loving character in an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So
I was going to get there after Aquabats, but man, the Aquabats are fucking legendary.
I didn't mean to insult you, of course. And just alphabetically, Aquabats comes before Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So
and of course, obviously, you always interview in alphabetical order. That's the only way you do it.
Yeah, it was such a thrill. It was like 5 days in the Santa Clarita area, which is just like great Simi Valley, sort of beautiful big mountains, and hanging out with like 5 sweetie pies. And I'm just saying the amount of band members. It's not. If there's 6, I don't mean to say there were 5, and you're like, who's he? All of them were. And it was really fun because it was a lot of, just thinking about it now, it was a lot of homemade aesthetic stuff, which I really appreciated. And then obviously, like, their sense of humor and spirit was great. And then, but yeah, a friend who was friends with them, they asked her if they'd ask me, and she asked me, and I said yes, and they said okay, so I came and did it. It was fun.
Nice. I grew up listening to them, watching them. Growing up in the desert, like nobody ever played up there, so I drive down to Pomona, Upland, and some of those places to watch some of these big shows. But man, Aquabats always put on a hell of a show.
Yeah, so you got to see them perform live.
Yeah, and they're still they're coming to Kansas City in like 4 months. I'm thinking like maybe I could take my kids this time.
That rules. Oh my gosh. Hey, how old are your kids, if you don't mind me asking?
I have a 9-year-old and a about to be 8-year-old in August.
Yes. Hey, that's awesome. Well, birthdays are exciting when you're 8, so hey, that's cool.
Well, I mean, good transition, not to put you on the spot. Both of my kids are special needs. I've got 2 autistic kids, and one of them has ADHD, and I have ADHD, and I read that you struggled with OCD. Was that something that was true?
Yeah. In probably started emerging around 3rd or 4th grade, kind of like, and it like many things. It started off where the organizing, it felt so good, and like and it wasn't like anything about like germs or cleanliness or anything like that.
Right.
My parents wish it was about cleanliness and hygiene. It was like organizing, prioritizing, and making lists and stuff. And at first it felt good, and then after a while it started just like commanding everything, and it was no fun. After a while it was just like, oh, I thought this was about efficiency, and it's the opposite of efficiency. And then my parents, who are very open and open-minded and loving, they made sure I went and got on some medication, which did help without a doubt. That plus, going and talking to a counselor, shaking that all out and figuring out, like, having the space with the meds to be able to go, okay, I'm going to have a little clearance here to get through it. And it worked. So when I say this, it's not like, but it was this, it's now been canceled. They took it off the market, this med. And I've encountered other people in my life who took this in like high school and stuff.
Oh, wow.
And they're like, oh my God, did you just sleep the whole time? It's like, yes. Like something like it like talks you out. And then the other tidbit that you'll share when somebody finds out, like, oh, you also took it. It's like, hey, kind of a bummer how when Columbine happened and they did autopsies on the 2 Columbine killers, the only thing they had in their system was that. They're like, what were these boys on? Let's see what, cooked them up to do such a thing. It was like, oh, yikes. Okay, well, hopefully we'll send a memo. But it did. I shouldn't even bring that up because it worked for me. And
but, I mean, typical Big Pharma, they cancel it because of the marketing, probably.
I think so. Probably. It was not good. Not good marketing.
Yikes. No, I primarily, like, I've talked about this on here before as somebody that struggles with ADHD and is still, like, trying to be hyper productive with as much as I can be. It's important to show people that you can still do things when you've got stuff going on in your own life. And it's nice to see, especially from somebody from a small town that was struggling with that you can have resources, you can have a supportive family, you can find your way to make it big and run your own Netflix show. I mean, that's a big deal.
No, that's right on. I appreciate not just you say that about me, but all people. It's nice. The aspect of also in one's work.
Yeah.
If that can be, I don't want to say it's like harnessing the power of lightning or something like that, but like if it can be put to good and not in a destructive way, like there's a power in it too. So yeah.
Well, and not to mention as a writer, I'm sure that the unique experience of that can lend itself to writing realistic feeling characters, which unfortunately for a lot of us that are neurodivergent, we struggle with some of those, but other people that are seemingly just perfect don't ever have to deal with those.
Hey, I saw a shirt once that said "Po Buddy's Nerfect," so I don't think anybody's perfect. Yeah.
Well, Tom Cruise would beg to differ. Brooklyn Nine-Nine. You brought up that episode. You brought up Andy's comedy troupe earlier. How was working on that? Because man, that show started to take off around when you were on it.
Yeah, it's funny with right when a series gets distributed and people are watching it as it's coming out, and it ruled. Hey, my friend Neil Campbell, he's a writer and producer of the show. He hooked me up.
Nice.
But it was fun getting to do ska stuff. I got to do a little rude boy dance. I got to wear a little pork pie hat. Trying to remember, it filmed at a real high school, and I always appreciate when you're in area with like adolescents or whatever.
Yeah,
it's really great how little they could care about what anybody's doing. It really is like a nice refresher when you come to work. Right. You're like, this is important work what they're doing, and they're looking at you like, you guys are a-holes.
You're just an inconvenience for them, basically.
Yeah. But Andy, he rules, man. Andy Samberg is now a co-creator on Digman, a show that Neil Campbell, he's the other co-creator, and Digman is this amazing animated series that's about that's like a comic riff on Indiana Jones style adventure, National Treasure style stories, and the highest compliment I can give it is that every joke is different every episode. There's not like two puns. Like they'll have one great, it's very impressive. And the little MacGuffins in each episode, they could be real deal MacGuffins in a real deal Indiana Jones movie. They're not goofing around. They're like really cool. So if you even just like love that sort of stuff, it's a fun show to watch.
Amazing. Netflix, I brought it up. Streaming and all that has been such a huge huge influence surrounding the industry over the last few years. But two things primarily that are a big deal on your resume. I'd love to talk about Paul Reubens a little bit.
Of course.
You got to write a movie with him. How was that process? Because this is somebody that a lot of us grew up respecting, and then in the 2010s, decades after you probably saw his face for the first time, you get to suddenly go to work with this man. Like that's got to be a dream come true.
Yeah, it was a dream come true. And, you saying you get to see this guy after seeing him years, that truly was like the first two like writing sessions or meeting him. It was really just me looking at him and his mouth moving and being like, that's Pee-wee who's talking, but that's also Paul. Like, right. I had it took like 8 hours with him before I could like lock into like a reality of, but no, he was definitely like you said, I mean, just meant so much to me growing up. He was why I loved comedy. And when he passed away, you could tell anybody who was creative and cool. It was like David Bowie or Prince or something. It was like when he passed away, the love came from, I feel like, a special place from people who, it's the really kind of cool alchemy between this misfit is speaking for a misfit feeling I have, but the work is so great, it kind of transcends that. So like grandmas you don't like listen to David Bowie songs and like, you know what I mean? It's really cool what they managed to pull off. So I think losing that sort of creative spirit in the world is great. There was nobody else like him. Right. I'm trying to think of something, because I have so many memories that I could share with him, but I don't think I've ever shared this. I'll just do it here for you. He told me he was once at a party and he turned a corner, and this would have been maybe mid to late 80s, and Bob Dylan was there. He was starstruck by Paul and was like, I am a really big fan of yours. And Paul was like, oh, thank you. Now, think about that. Bob Dylan doesn't give it up for anybody. Right. And he ain't crossing rooms to tell people and shake their hands. Anybody who's still living, I mean, anybody who would do that for is like long dead. Right. But he recognized this guy is the man. He's doing the thing that, Bob Dylan did, which is just like brought whatever his unique spirit to the public. It's really cool what he pulled off.
Paul he's one of those, like, I hate to use the word character because it sounds demeaning, but I mean, he is such like a bigger than this room type of character, no matter where he's at. And he's one of those that is accepting of everybody. And so because of that, it feels like most people that grew up around that time have at least one story where you're like, fuck yeah, I really love that. And I felt like it was okay and cool to do that. And that a lot of people aren't like that. There's so much like gatekeeping bullshit around that. Like Jim Henson is probably one of the only other ones that I can put up there similar. Like he just wants everybody to be happy, like Mr. Rogers type of feeling. Exactly.
I think, to that point, there is like a very pivotal moment in the first 5 to 10 minutes of Pee-wee's Big Adventure that decides everything, which is Pee-wee. It's a small moment, but Pee-wee comes out and he starts up his sprinkler and he calls out to the neighbor like, hey, I'm gonna water my lawn now. And the neighbor goes, he smiles, he loves it. He's like, okay, Pee-wee. And he closes the window and Pee-wee turns on the sprinkler and it sprays all over the guy's glass. And the movie makes it a point they take time in the editing to show the neighbor behind the glass laughing. He loves it. And I can't think of any other comic character who that's the choice, is he does something and everybody loves it. It's usually the like shaking your fist at Ernest. What did Ernest get us into? But I love Ernest, don't get me wrong. But yeah, he found a way to make that really funny. And you gotta imagine it's some sort of utopia for him. That was the idea, that everybody could do their own thing and everybody would find it interesting rather than threatening or
I swear I could just gush over Paul for like the next hour, but there's something about getting to work with somebody like that I'm insanely jealous, but also just I can't imagine how like writers' rooms for the rest of your life will be affected by what you were able to feel during that time.
Yeah, it's true. And getting to sit side by side and writing with him. It's before I met him, I tried writing a script that was like, oh, I'm going to try to write a Pee-wee style script, because Big Adventure is like my favorite comedy. And I was like, oh, and I tried to write it. And I remember it was really long and boring and not funny. And when I met Paul and we started working together, I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to find out like what the secret sauce is. I discovered it helps when you're a genius. I was like, oh, that's what it is. Paul's brilliant. You can't just do. But it was all about minimalism, and his whole thing was, when I write something, I don't want somebody on page 25 to have to think and go back to page 10 to know what they're talking about. And so the descriptions were always really clean and the dialogue was like spare. And so I'll think about that a lot, not if I'm in a writer's room or anything, but just reading a script or watching something, a TV movie, and I'm like, oh, this feels, I don't know if the word is turgid or if that's the right use. When something's slow or something. Like my response here. Sorry.
You are fine. Speaking of brilliance, and not to like worship you too much for just a moment, I was an early convert to Love. For anybody that's never seen it, 3 seasons on Netflix, one of in my opinion, one of the great modern, like very indie feeling comedies that you don't get the option to see through like modern sitcoms, because it's something that had to have a chance taken on it. But one of the things I wanted to lead into with this is it's clearly incredibly personal. It's you, your wife, there's so much put into it. Just first off, how do you get something like that out of you and onto the screen for everybody when it means visibly so much to you? I can't imagine behind the scenes, like how much that actually takes out of you.
Oh, well, thank you, Ryan, for your kind words, first of all. It was co-created with my wife, Leslie Arfin, and myself, and Judd Apatow. The 3 of us wrote it together, and it was based on Leslie and I wrote a treatment for an idea about 2 people who were similar to those characters who decide to move in together. And it's too early, but they decide to. And we pitched that, and Judd liked the characters a lot and liked the relationship. And he said, oh, I've had this idea for a long time of wanting to do a TV show that's about one relationship. So he asked if we'd want to work on that, take these characters and apply it to that. So then the 3 of us started writing that. And in terms of it being personal, it is for starters, I loved working on the show, and the process was great. Period. And the sharing personal parts of oneself in order, knowing that that's like in sort of what Judd makes. That stuff, when the choice is to be personal, it's best to be as honest as possible.
Yeah,
it's funny. They're really kind of exaggerated.
of course.
Leslie and I, when we first started writing it, Judd was like, well, you guys kind of are healthy. You go to therapy. You talk about this stuff. He's like, they can't be there. You should have them way further before they're, have any sort of insight with each other. And so,
what's wrong with you? Come on.
Yeah.
Be more screwed up.
So we did like figure out like, oh, what's kind of the most comically exaggerated versions of each character. I and Leslie and I were both very conscious that when making something about that people would watch and go, oh, you could see connections to real life.
Yeah.
It's really easy to go, or we never wanted to go down the path of Gus. My character writes a song, and everybody goes like, Gus is a great guy, and he wrote a great song, and we love him. Like. That was an added hump to like writing it,
right.
But that to answer your question of like writing personally, that was the hump that was hard for me to get over. Which is, if I just wrote a character who was original and nothing about me, I would give them more credit and I would let them do nicer things and kinder things. But like. Not wanting to like be like, this is about us and this is why we're really great. Like so and I think the choices that were made were all correct, but watching it I'm like, oh yeah, this show goes harder on on ourselves than maybe we should. Maybe we could have been easy. No, I'm really happy with how it turned out. And just to what you were saying about streaming and stuff, in the similar vein of Lonely Island, kick down the door so others may pass through. Just something happened around 2011 or 12, 13 with Lena Dunham with Girls, like taking the in the best way possible. She rules. And if I was her, I would be sitting back and thinking, all you MFers got shows based on what I put out there. I mean, Louis had a precedent to it, but I don't know. I really feel like she laid out the blueprint of how somebody does their point of view comic show in this day and age where it's not corny. And people did different things with it stylistically and stuff, but it just so happened that streaming, Netflix, that all was a cooking right when she was giving everybody the recipe. So again, not trying, no false modesty, but it's similar to the UCB thing of like, they needed a calendar filled. With Netflix, it was like, oh my God, they just have deep archives that need to be filled. And so that was, but yeah, now, 2024, streaming services, people are outside of Netflix, people are, what would you say, scratching their heads. Is that the best way to put it? People are scratching their heads.
That's a good way to put it. We'll go down that path a little more in a minute, I'm sure.
Oh, wonderful. No, seriously, it's all good. Yeah.
Your show is one of the first shows to unfortunately be like, it's tied to the whole Netflix does 3 seasons and it's over sort of thing. And I think it made sense with Love. It felt like a really nice bow on the end of it. But I mean, not that Reed Hastings is one of my biggest viewers or anything, but how was it working with Netflix? Did it feel like a decent arena for you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. They were down for whatever we were stoked to do. And I'm sure that had so much to do with Judd, the working relationship. But
Yeah.
even when wasn't present, the relationship was strong. I felt that it was like, oh, I'm around people who love movies and TV shows, which was like not always apparent in other production companies and studios. You'd be sitting there and be like, I think you figured out a formula about Wedding Crashers and you're trying to repeat this? Is that what this meeting is about? Like, whereas like meeting with Netflix, it was people who were just like gaga about getting to get to do this cool thing. It's interesting with in terms of the process and stuff, because with what you were saying about the 3 seasons, I've heard that people I don't know if this is true, but it does sound like some kind of wheel got wrapped around the axle where people who were audiences don't want to get into a show unless they know there's a bunch of them and it finishes.
Yep.
But streaming services don't want to greenlight a show unless they know people are watching. And so I do think those two kind of different things, they get into loggerheads. It seems like HBO has figured it out still, where it's like putting a new episode out every Sunday right before people go back and see other human beings is a pretty smart way to like get people stoked for a thing. But I don't know if you're going to bring this up, but it's also, we got to do a lot of Blu-ray talk on Love. And so we're talking about like a character goes like, why would you need these Blu-rays? Everything's on the internet anyway, which we were like, took some perverse delight that like calling it. But then the next season, she finds like a Blockbuster card in my wallet and she's like, all the cool people I knew like worked at Blockbuster. And it's true. Like I remember thinking that. And but then Blockbuster was dead and doing it on a streaming service just seemed like rubbing it in. I felt terrible.
I always love that. And I think there's one of the scenes in an early season, you have a whole bunch, like a giant stack of DVDs or something. This was a great one. Yeah.
Yes, I'm getting rid of them. I'm throwing them out. But I don't know if you know this, but my first, after like some logging, transcribing jobs for reality TV shows, I hit the jackpot of getting to log and transcribe raw video footage for behind the scenes features on DVDs.
Nice.
And I love that job. It was the best. Yeah. Got to see some real fly on the wall stuff.
Speaking of fly on the wall and Love, just a cool little bit of trivia. One of my friend's bands, his song is actually In Love. There's a scene where you walk into a coffee shop, a nondescript coffee shop, and his is the one playing in the shop.
Oh my god, what's the band? What's
his band was Crusoe, Crusoe. He's been on the channel before too. I was helping, funny enough, with marketing for his band back then, and he was like, "Hey, my band's gonna be on this show Love that's coming out on Netflix next month. We gotta hype it up," and like writing up all the marketing for it and everything.
Nice, that's awesome. Yeah, our music supervisor, Lyle Workman, he was the guy who would find all these great songs, and then also and would write the scores and stuff. And I found out later that he was the guitarist on this Frank Black album I loved growing up called Teenager of the Year. And what happened was Frank Black just recorded all of these songs. They were ready to be released. He met Lyle and he was like, "Could you play guitar just over this one song?" Lyle, this isn't from Lyle. This is like, he had this own legendary status. And then I met him. It was like, and then Lyle played like a little guitar on one track, and Frank Black was like, could you play guitar on all of them? And he does, and it sounds amazing. And I was like, oh my God, you're the dude. So that was cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Talking about working with people that loves physical media and stuff. One of the big ones that I left out, you were an interesting, not super long or big character, but Inglorious Basterds. Quentin obviously is a massive physical media advocate and fan, and has been for decades. Like he was making waves with that, obviously in the early 90s. How was that set? Like I imagine you weren't there for a super long time to shoot that.
Yeah, you know what? The way the schedule worked out was I would work a day and I'd maybe get a few days off and work another day. So yeah, I got to be around. It was great. I was like, I still am movie mad. I'm movie mad. I love movies. And so I think I was 27 on set. And so being a movie mad person in his late 20s, getting to be on set with the movie mad director who loves movies, it was a dream come true. It was really awesome. And there's things, it's funny in retrospect, working on other stuff, the comparison, I go, oh wow, that was special. It enhances in its specialness. One thing that I noticed he did that like Judd did, and it really helps a performance. So if you directors out there want to hear this, I think Tarantino's talked about it before too. He just stands by the camera, like right off to the side, and just like watches the actors. And I did my best acting with Judd, with him right out of my purview, trying to act best for daddy. Like, whatever kind of sad emptiness actors feel, where they have to have that void of like immediate, like, oh, this person is into this.
Right.
Quentin understood it, and like, hey, he's got like some of the best acting, not just the era he was making movies, but all movies. People, some actors with the biggest resumes on earth, their best performances are in his movies. So, but yeah, oh man, he owns the New Beverly, so I go there and I get to see movies there. And he just purchased the Vista in the neighborhood, and I went and saw the New Beverly. I just saw Muppets Take Manhattan, and that was really fun. Speaking of Jim Henson,
I've got a Muppet tattooed on my arm. That's how much I love
Muppet?
I've got Animal.
Yeah, Animal's my daughter's favorite.
Nice.
That's what got her through the door.
You got an animal watching over me up at the top there every time.
He rules. Animal rules.
I got to go to the New Beverly in 2022, I think it was, when I went back to LA, visit Jeremy that set up this conversation.
Yes. Go Jeremy.
Man, the New Beverly it's like a mecca for people that love movies. It just feels special. There's something about sitting in there that's like, oh, like this is it. Like this is what we've been yearning for a long time.
Oh yeah, from top to bottom. Like from outside, that the marquee letters are changed every day for the movie, which when I was a kid, the specialness of driving by our theater downtown and seeing the marquee letters change for the new movie was like tablets coming down with like the 10 Commandments. It was just like, what thing is coming to our theater? This is so thrilling. And then you step through there, and why, my God, it's the widest array of candy you've ever seen. And the popcorn tastes so good. You realize, what have I been putting in my mouth at these AMC theaters?
It's true. It's true.
Also, as long as I'm bitching about AMC, you know what I've always wanted when I'm getting sticky drinks and beverages? I want to keep pressing the same digital screen as every single human in the theater. And I like it where I go up to a Coke machine and it has every variety of Coke except Coke.
AMC. And
Oh.
not to mention, you spent a lot for that ticket and for each of those snacks.
Yes, and they're basic snacks that you pulled off 7-Eleven style off a concession rack. Oh, I could go on and on. But hey, we don't have to bring one's glory up by putting down other things. I can just say the New Beverly is great. I don't have to.
So let's stay on New Bev. What's some of the best double features you've been able to catch?
Ooh, right on. I saw my first one I ever went to in 2004, before Quentin, I think, owned it.
Wow, yeah.
Was Fast Times at Ridgemont High and Valley Girl. And that was cool. I don't think this was a double feature because it was a late night, midnight screening. Joe Dante brought the preview screening print of Gremlins that had some scenes that were cut out after the previews were like, oh, you don't need this scene and that scene.
Right.
and it's interesting when you go to or I have a hang up like when I'm at the New Beverly, and I've grown past this, but to see somebody who like outwardly loves movies publicly, sometimes it gets me nervous. It's kind of like quite easy. People don't like this. Like I'm conditioned to think. So even in a theater of movie lovers, I'm still like, guys, let's not nerd out here too much. Okay, there's could be some cool people. Yeah. So I remember at the very beginning of Gremlins, this like white print on black disclaimer came up that was like, you are watching a preview, and it had been there since it was put on there at early 1984 when they had this preview screening, and my heart sang. Oh my God, I flipped out. I couldn't believe I was getting to see this. And I remember a guy in front of me but I'm keeping it cool, right? I'm like, I don't want to be a nerd. I'm loving this. And then this guy right in front of me, he does kind of this little like jump in his seat. He's so happy about this disclaimer too. And I remember thinking like, keep it cool, man. Don't blow it.
That's the rule at AMC's. You're allowed to do it at the New Bev.
I know. You're right. You're right. At an AMC, you got to keep your cool, but at New Bev, yeah. But saw Shampoo there. Wow. I recently saw Airplane Top Secret double feature. That's
a big one.
Amazing. And the best, and this will be the last New Beverly memory I'll share with you. I don't mean to bore you, but this
isn't boring at all.
I think that, thank you. I the best New Beverly experience I had, I think, was the last time I went, when I went to Airplane and Top Secret, which was I got to sit next to a family that had brought like their 12 and like 14-year-old sons, and I don't think they'd ever seen Airplane.
Oh, wow.
And they were like losing their shit, laughing so hard, and it was the laugh that I forgot about at home when you watch them, and I've seen them like 24 times, but like the laugh of, you laugh because it's just an immediate laugh, and then like 5 seconds pass where you realize like they got me with that insane stupid joke, and you start laughing at yourself. That was the cool experience in New Beverly, and I would notice it with those kids. They would like laugh, and then a new scene would start, but they'd still be reflecting on that crazy joke about how the boy ate his foot because he got stuck in the fridge, So, but
that's amazing.
Yes, it was great. Are you a comedy fan of Airplane, Top Secret, Naked Gun?
I mean, I have a heart, right? Of course. I got really lucky. I've been to the New Bev once, and it just so happened to be that I got to go for a double feature, and it was a John Waters night. I got to see Polyester and Serial Mom, and because it was him in that place, he was there. No, he was not there. But it was just
in that the vibe
to watch people that will appreciate cinema that's as out there as John Waters in a cinematic mecca like the New Bev it's a surreal experience to understand like No, there's like 150 people that will leave here happy following a John Waters film, which is not always common.
That's so true. The only John Waters movie where there's walk-ins, not walk-outs.
People fighting for the Smellorama cards from polyester.
To get autographed by the person they saw it with. Yeah. To dovetail back to Paul Rubens, he was friends with John Waters, so he would tell me fun John Waters stories, and John Waters came to visit a couple weekends ago, and he would tell me about what they did and what they talked about. But he told me that after the Pee-wee movie we wrote, John Waters saw it and emailed Paul, and he said he liked it, and compliments from people you respect or compliments from friends. In terms of Paul and John Waters' case, it means a lot. But the particular compliment he gave, I thought was really cool and just says a lot about what the two of their friendship was about. He said, that was a great movie. I really liked it. I'm so happy there was none of that ironic hipster bullshit comedy. I was like, oh, cool. Like, and that's, Paul and I, we didn't use that term, but we talked about how it's like, it's okay if something gets corny. It's funny to be corny. It's funny to be genuine. We don't have to irony it up. And the fact that John Waters dug that, it made me very happy.
Genuine camp is a good thing.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
We don't have a ton of time left, and we've barely talked about physical media. What's the story with you in physical media? It seems like you're as deep into this as some of us.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, when did I first get bit by the bug, my man? Joe's Movie House in Lamar's, Iowa. It's funny. A couple days ago, we were driving somewhere, and she said, there was a long line outside a coffee place right next to this ice cream place she likes. It's called Jenny's. And I was like, wow, look at that long line outside the coffee place. And she's like, yeah, why do they hate Jenny's? I was like, I don't... It's not an either or. In Lamar's, Iowa, I remember when we would rent a VCR player, and then we had to make some exchange where now that we bought the VCR, we can rent any movie, so we don't need HBO anymore. So when we got the VCR, we lost HBO. I think the very first VHS tape I remember watching was Temple of Doom on Christmas morning. My family had rented it, and we watched it. Blew my mind. And it was cool, too, in the way, home video could work, which was I woke up that morning to my sister talking about it with my dad, because my sister had seen it in theaters, but my dad started watching it the night before on tape. And truly, I thought, my parents, they love thrillers and suspense movies. They would rent them probably Wednesday, Thursday night, right? They rent a video. A lot of my understanding of movie storytelling is hearing my mom re-summarize a movie that my dad fell asleep to. It'll be so she had to get the key to order the lock in order. Oh, why was that locked? Because he told her. But I'm like, oh, okay, this story is shaping up to be quite the pot boiler here. But then, then I remember we would tape stuff off of HBO free weekends. So I had Pee-wee's Big Adventure on tape, but with call this number to get HBO free every year, every day. And then that grew into just really, I don't know how you feel if you're in the same age range, but outside of this kind of 20-year age range, a lot of people didn't get that awesome from age birth, I don't know, till when you're a teenager, till college, until you're 18, where you have so little power and control over your life, to be able to get this little slice of control and it's entertainment. And particularly, filmmakers talk about, or creators, like, oh, I went to the theater and I saw this movie a dozen times, and I do think, like, wow, well, this peer group, they had Batman 1989 on a tape and watched it 100 times. Yep. and true just comforts of the VHS tapes. The Back to the Future Part 2, Death Becomes Her, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, these like Zemeckis VHS movies.
I was about to say, somebody loved Zemeckis.
Oh, they meant everything to me. They were perfect. And like Tim Burton movies, they're just like so perfect for a kid. They're like really fun. And then in high school, having the freedom of going down, and indie cinema we might not have had the art house theaters we wanted, but you just had to wait a year, and Reservoir Dogs would eventually get to your video store, and you got to watch it. Yep. And a guy got in trouble for renting Reservoir Dogs to us. He was like, "You guys blew it. I told you when I gave it to you, you couldn't let somebody." We're like, "We're sorry." And then, once I got to college in Iowa City, there was That's Rentertainment. And it was, I mean, people go to like college for, it's like there's knowledge in those buildings and I can get them. That's my ticket. Not being cheeky, like having that video store where it had all these movies that I've always wanted to see, but they just couldn't touch the chain rental places where I lived.
Yeah.
Oh, I flipped out. Like, I was renting Last House on the Left and Bad Ronald and stuff. It was just like, it was so great. So once I moved out to Los Angeles, that stuff was dying. You could still go to video stores. But then that's, when the love of DVDs and Blu-rays and beyond came in. I actually grabbed some faves, if I can show you.
Hell yeah, please.
I'll explain them because I know it's an audio medium. But
no, this is video as well. Actually, I'm going to show the video.
At that. Good thing I wasn't wearing my shirt that has turds all over it. Oh my gosh, I would have been so embarrassed.
That's a Tuesday shirt. I get it.
So this is one of my favorite Blu-rays. It's this Raising Cain, where it includes a special feature where this guy had heard the movie got re-edited after test screenings to be something different, and he was like, well, I'm gonna re-edit it and put it online. And Brian De Palma saw it. He's like, hey, I like that, can we put it on the DVD? It's so cool. And then I have a For Your Consideration DVD for The Kid and I, which is this Penelope Spheres movie from the early aughts, where it was funded by Tom Arnold's neighbor, who was like a bajillionaire, and he wanted his neighbor to write his son into like a True Lies style movie because his son loved True Lies. So Tom Arnold made this kind of like meta movie where it's about him writing a True Lies movie for the son, but it ends with him with some brief cameos from Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis, where he walks into a room and they're there. Do you know what the first thing he says to himself, or he whispers to himself when he sees Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jamie Lee Curtis from across the room? He goes,
not at all.
He goes, what is real? That's how weird this movie is. So I'm very happy to have that. And then over COVID, when I was losing my mind, I started getting into these Warner Brothers, what would you call them? Library style kind of? Yeah,
like
booklet kind of.
Library rental copies? Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Back when, and it's so cute because when they came out, they thought like professors were getting it or something. The backs have essays. Like I remember the back of the Risky Business one is like, the character from Risky Business is in the mold of the Halden Caulfields. I'm like, what is this shit? This is crazy, guys.
I love that it reads with an accent, too.
You push a button and it does that. But I got this Shining one because I heard that when this is in the movie theater, the end credits had a blue color to the font. And when it came out on this video, everybody was like, the blue font gets too stream. You can't see it. So the next one that came out in 1990 or whatever, that video, they changed it to white on black. So the only way you could see the blue, even DVD Blu-rays, the only way you could see it is it was meant to be seen in theaters. Totally worth it. Blue colored font. Yep.
I'm gonna have to check the 4K because I believe they went back to the original negative for that. I wonder if it's back blue again.
Oh my god, I bet it's blue again, and now I'm an idiot. And then lastly, I had a Warner Brothers thing of Dress to Kill, and
cover.
That poster rules.
Yeah.
And then DVDs, it's a release that puts in like a minute of unedited footage so people could see it on video. Yeah. What about you? What would you say was your first I'm curious, like when you walked into a video store, what comes in your mind as the rental on the shelf?
Well, funny enough, I've told the story in here a few times, and I don't think I've ever heard somebody tell a similar story, but I feel like Lamar's and growing up in Barstow kind of had a similar experience. People have never really been able to fathom, like, you grew up in California, you had access to everything, and it's like, Barstow is nothing. And when you think about it, they don't have anything around them for like 40 miles. So all we had was the mainstream titles. And the big one that was for me, when I was 8 years old, my mom and dad let me pick what I wanted to see. And my first big, this is my first big boy movie. I picked Halloween. I was 8 years old. We got done watching the movie. My dad offered me $5 to go run out and touch our backyard fence. And I said, screw you, I'm going to bed. But yeah, that was the first big thing. And for years, I was just the same thing as you, like recycling some of these VHS tapes that otherwise I don't have access to anything else. If I don't watch this 43 times over the next 6 months, I'm not watching anything. So of course I'm going to watch it 43 times. So the big thing is kind of like you, we haven't even been able to talk about music yet, but I got into the music scene. I was in marching band. I was playing bass, playing guitar, and hosting shows and doing scheduling, promoting for some bands. I worked at a radio station for a couple years, and the bands started to become like close friends, and we'd start talking like, what inspired some of your songs? And they start telling me like, it's these punk rock bands, and like, you've never seen Evil Dead? Let's talk about that. And I was like 19 years old and went, I've never even heard of Evil Dead. Let's go find out what that is. And so from that, kind of like you, I was about like entering college age, and I'd have to go to a bigger city to find, I don't know, like Circuit City to find their DVD section and be like, one Evil Dead, sir. And I'd buy it, and I'd go home and be like, where's this been my entire life? And I fell in love with that shit. And so I started eating up all this like B and cult cinema that has been the bastion of my life ever since then, it feels like.
Yeah. Oh, dude. Totally. In high school, there was a video update in Sioux City that somehow just got their hands on the most far out stuff. That was all like B movie things, exploitation films. But what was so thrilling about it was they weren't formulaic. Like they didn't have to. I mean, I'm saying the obvious thing, but like that was like, had no idea movies could be transgressive or flagrant. And so see, that stuff was doubly mind blowing. Like, and to be able to like pick something, roll the dice, and have it pay off with your group of friends, like it was the best. You mentioned marching band. What do you play?
I grew up, I played clarinet, taught myself bass clarinet, and then because they're similar, I taught myself how to play saxophone because I was dying to be in the jazz band. So I borrowed my teacher's Barry sax, went home and over a summer taught myself how to play baritone saxophone. I rode with that for a good 4 or 5 years, and then right as I was about to graduate, I picked up a guitar, picked up a bass. I bought a drum set on Craigslist for like $300. I had a room full of instruments, and then sadly sold everything to be able to move to Kansas City. And it was a huge part of my life, and it got me out of California. It was one of the big things. Like, that room made me like $1,500 so I could pack the new wife up, and we moved to Kansas City together.
Oh, that's fantastic. What do you cross any paths with musicians or the music world in Kansas City? Is it thriving or not thriving? I don't know.
It's okay. We're close to Lawrence, Kansas, which has had a bunch of like emo bands sprung out of Lawrence.
Yeah.
KU is out there.
Lawrence is very similar to Iowa City, where you could tell a band is going to the next city with college kids.
Yep.
But I interrupted. Sorry, what were you saying?
No, you're fine. I was just a random happenstance. One of the bands that stayed with me, that introduced me to Evil Dead in California, I come out here years later, literally like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years later, I didn't know anybody here. I was looking for a new job because my wife was pregnant, and I went to sell insurance to a plumbing company, and the guy's like, I don't want your insurance, but you're a good salesman. You want to come like see if you want to work for us? So I rode with him for a day, and I was with him for like 6 hours, and we're going back to the shop, and he goes, I like you. What do you do for fun? I'm like, well, I'm super into music. I love music. He goes, oh, my son's in a band. What kind of music do you like? The band that I love, that stayed with me in California, that I have tattooed on my leg, his son was the guitarist, and I had no idea he was from here. And I just ended up in his van 1,600 miles away from home.
That rules!
Yeah.
I love that. What was the
weirdest
band?
Showbread. They're I don't think they're an active band anymore, but they're an active punk band that was from like 2002 all the way up to like 2016. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. You seen punk band, Evil Dead, like the secret handshake that underground music has with underground movies is great. It's awesome. And a lot of times, somebody who likes a band you like will also like a movie they think you'll like, and so it goes.
A lot of those, they end up inspiring each other, and the way that those creatives thrive from each other, there's so much that I've discovered because of those webs. You just follow a thread that somebody brings up, and suddenly a movie you find is your next favorite movie for years.
Yeah, I mean, there's very few bands that kind of everybody can. You could play a song and everybody's like, "Oh, I like this song. I like this band." And I mean, truly, I can only think of like maybe 3, but one of them is like a horror influenced punk band, The Misfits. Everybody loves The Misfits. Like, truly, I've never met anybody who's like, they suck. Like, they make people really happy, and it is some combination of that music and what they're singing about. How you'd be some Halloween version of Scrooge if you didn't like that.
Well, and to bring it full circle as we end this thing, I feel like that community, it really kind of grasps a lot of the same things we were talking about with Paul Rubens and Henson. Like, it's one of the most inclusive, we will care about each other communities ever. Like, the DIY punk scene is classic. You know, if you fall down in the pit, we'll help you back up. If you're needing $1 to get on the bus, we'll pay for it. Like, it's one of those. Everybody just loves you and will happily take you in no matter what.
I know. I was talking to somebody a couple of months ago at like just a backyard party. We're hanging out, we're talking, and I was like talking about how the two of us, it could like bring a tear to our eye thinking about how the punk scene was like open to all. So the sweetest thing on earth, which was you would see like a young gay or lesbian be friends with a goth, and they're friends with hardcore kids. It's just like, because it really doesn't matter. It's just sort of like, we've got this corner where we're on the outside And so, yeah, whatever community that comes together around it, it's the best. But similar with horror fans, it's so funny what a bunch of little sweeties they are.
Yep.
It's like
my wife and I raising our kids. It's a kind of a scary time for a lot of people in some of these towns and stuff. And so we're raising our kids with special needs, and we have to have that talk. You come home and they've had like active shooter drills or something. We're like, hey, if something ever happens, find like the meanest looking person with piercings all over their face with the craziest hair. That person will help you.
Oh, that's true. That's look for the helpers. Look for the tattooed helpers.
There's Mr. Rogers again. Love it.
Yes.
Paul, this has been amazing. I feel like you're a new friend I could just talk to the next 4 hours.
Oh, Ryan, same, man. Same. Sorry we can't talk further, but if you ever want to have me come back again, I would love that. There's so much more that we can chat about. And the one thing I'd be remiss not to share with physical media is, dude, those commentaries, they are God's gift, or like dogs or cats. I'm like, whose hand did we shake to get audio commentaries? They are so great. And just giving shout outs to the ones I love. There's a David Fincher, Robert Towne commentary for Chinatown. That's amazing. I think my first commentary I ever heard is one of my favorites. It's Alexander Payne's for Election.
Wow. Okay.
I really love that one. And the one that recently I listened to and it blew my mind was Steven Soderbergh does a commentary with Mike Nichols for Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Yep.
And man, they should just do that with all commentaries. Just have somebody who's a fan talking to the filmmaker, because the filmmaker, when they're alone, they're too bashful maybe or something to share it. But if you have somebody just like straight up kissing your ass and going, hey, genius, why'd you make that choice? Well, I did it because it gets them to open up. Same I've noticed if a filmmaker does a European interview, like not in America. In America, they'll be like cagey and not answer questions straight. But in Europe, either because they want to seem smart or they're just choosing their words carefully so they're not like misunderstood. The Coen brothers will open up in a French interview. It's the best.
So as we go, what's the deal with physical media for Netflix stuff? Are we ever going to be able to get love, you think?
Dude, maybe it was because I knew we were going to be doing the podcast today. I had a true just chill, a shudder go through my spine of like, I don't think it'll ever go on physical media. So it's owned by Netflix. So it's there, and hopefully it will always be there, knock on wood. But yeah, I actually was thinking like this morning, I was like, should I contact Judd to see if he has the discs so I can watch? I mean, it's the same with like some of my friends made some really brilliant like Funny or Die videos that just kind of got lost to the sands of the internet when one company buys out the other. So, man, I would love it because if there was, mainly because our scripts were always overwritten with more scenes than we knew we could fit in, and we had 6 days instead of 5 to shoot stuff, so we would shoot stuff in hopes to see if it worked, it would get in. And a lot of times those were like really, it was nice to have time to explore. Awesome. But when we went from like we'd usually lose like 10 minutes of scenes per episode that I would like. And with a show that's kind of like one of those more slice of life stuff, that unfortunately will have to go sometimes in terms of runtime, but it'll have the things that are most interesting in terms of character. So that would be cool if there was ever a physical release, having like people get to see those scenes. But why can't they do deleted scenes on everything streaming? If I could just click on Punky Brewster season 2 and get to see the deleted scenes from episode 4 whenever I wanted. Oh, that's the dream.
I can't imagine clicking on Love and being like, season 3, episode 3, let's listen to Paul's commentary on this and talk about the making of that specific episode. Why not? They should live there.
I was part of that cool little funky weird season 4 of Arrested Development where the original plan was that they could be sequenced out of order and you'd be able to kind of make sense of the story. Yep. And then they realized due to like network stuff, they weren't able to show them out of order, so they had to show them. But that was like a true... there's a new world of streaming and somebody's trying to figure out how to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Do they do that now? Are there little... I mean, this is a physical media show. Who cares what they do? I just didn't know if they could do stuff out of sequence now. And
in very small ways, like there was you ever watch any Cynthia Rothrock movies, like old martial arts movies?
No, I wish I did.
So there is a company out of the UK named Eureka that put out a Blu-ray release last year that, because of playing stuff in Hong Kong and then taking it to mainland China and then taking it to the US and the UK, these movies have like 4 cuts, because some of them, they want them longer, some of them, they want them shorter so they can play more movies, some of them want them edited for TV, whatever. So there's like 4 or 5 cuts of this movie. And this company in Eureka, they worked on the disc in a way to make it, if you just put in the disc and press play, it chooses a random ending for you to come up. Whoa. Like the old, like how they would show Clue in the theater. You don't know what ending you're going to get. And this Blu-ray disc does the same. You can go to the menu and choose which one so you can see them all. But you can just, I'm going to have a good night, put it in and play the lotto and see which one I get.
That rules. I mean, I could list 100 of the exclusive charms that like physical media offers that no other thing does. But one that I've noticed with the when you were saying alternate cuts, I'll watch horror movies where they get European scenes and they add them into the thing. So I saw it with the Mutilator and From Beyond and the Prowler. All 3 of these movies had this thing happen where during the most intense part of the kill is also the point where they have to go to the other stuff that got like cut out and put in. And it's okay. It looks a little different, the color, whatever. So in the same way that people I know who saw like slasher movies, the TV edited versions, they're like, yeah, it's just as scary to use weird slow-mo or weird dialogue switching around to get around violence. It sends like a weird like feeling.
Yeah.
I love it now. When I watch those alternate cuts, when the color starts to change, I'm like, oh boy, we got an uncut scene here. What's going to go down? It's thrilling. And like, it's just one of those small little perks that can only come from this world.
Well, I mean, you said there's 100, so that will have to be the next conversation. We'll get you back and we'll list 100 reasons to love physical media, perhaps.
That's great. Yes. We'll do like 99 bottles of beer on the wall, but 99 bottles of why we love this.
Hell yeah. Well, I know we both got to go be dads, so thanks for hanging out tonight. This has been
thank you, Ryan.
Remarkable. I'm thrilled to have you on here.
Now, when this ends, will you still be here so I can, officially say goodbye? Okay. Because I don't want it to be like, okay, great being on the show. And then it goes black. I'm like, what? So yes, thank you for having me on the show. I hope people enjoyed it. I'd love to come back again sometime.
Thank you for listening to the Disconnected Podcast. There's one big thing that you could do to help the show, and that is to leave a rating and review on the podcast service of your choice. Thank you.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. and part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Hello!
This is Matt.
And Emily from Scarecrow Video in Seattle, Washington. Did you know that we have the largest video collection in the world? We have over 146,000 titles and growing. That's over 3 times more than Netflix, Amazon, Max, and Hulu combined.
Plus, Scarecrow now offers rent-by-mail service throughout the U.S., so check out scarecrowvideo.org for details. You can catch Emily and I, or Matt and I, if that was going to be you saying that, on our bi-weekly YouTube show, Viva Physical Media, for video recommendations and so much more.
See ya!
Bye!